I will promote Jamie ASL interpreter. 1 second.
Did I hear a second?
Hold on, Stephen, I'm coming for you too. Hold on.
Oh, there we go.
Yay.
We
It
are
worked.
also live and ready to go when you are.
Thank you. Give us a moment. I'm renaming everybody because I just want to.
Sorry about that. We have 60,000 devices and not one of them wanted to work.
Okay. We have a little baby agenda. I will project it. And we have quorum, so call the meeting to order at 7:04. While I pull up the agenda, Mr. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Chair Trindade Duramo.
I am present.
Commissioner Holden. Sorry, one more time. Oh, we can't hear you actually. Oh, there we go.
There we
Now
go.
you're coming through. Great.
You're
Commissioner Kenzik, yeah, you're good. Kenzik,
Present.
Hanrahan,
Here.
Commissioner Sycamore,
Present.
Commissioner Harris,
here.
Commissioner Fay is here. Commissioner Lemon Strauss has sent his regrets, and Commissioner Barrio is traveling. So we have everyone accounted for, and with a 7 of 9, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Just for everyone's awareness, since we didn't distribute this version of it, here's our agenda for the evening. Since this is a special meeting, as you all know, the rule is that we cannot consider things that were not noticed for the special meeting. So we have 3 topics that were noticed a week ago. They are here before you. They are also on our website, and they were in your email. We have 2 resolutions that came out of the ABRA committee, alcoholic beverage, what the hell? Regulations, something. ABCUR, this is not actually the correct thing. It is, don't know why this is this way. That tripped me up. Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Regulations Committee, wonderful, which Commissioner Henry will walk through. And then we're talking about a resolution that came up from the Economic Development Committee regarding the U Street Performance Parking Zone. I will take this down. I think we can all remember 3 things, I hope. Mr. Many, welcome aboard. To the question in the chat, there is not an ASL interpreter. Sorry, that was a mistaken label on someone's Zoom account. You got it, no problem. Okay, let us begin. Commissioner, well, you know what? Sorry, let me just take a moment of privilege to talk really quickly about a couple administrative things. You may have noticed in the email today that reminded you of this meeting that we have called a second special meeting for the month of June, much to everyone's jubilation. It will take place next Monday, June 29th at 6 p.m. I repeat, 6 p.m., not 7. And we are convening because otherwise we would miss a deadline to provide important information into the protest of the ABCA license application by SOAST at 9th and T. And so in order to get that in on time, due to ABCA's internal deadline of ABC Board's internal deadline, we'll be meeting next week very briefly to consider a letter. Commissioner Harris, a question or comment on that point?
Have we not asked ABCA to
We have.
Okay. I feel
And
like those
being-
okay.
They're
Yeah.
being grumpy.
Normally they're amenable to that, especially since our meeting, I mean, I get our meeting is like in 2 weeks, but it's a little strange that they wouldn't allow that.
Well, and our meeting is 6 days before the protest hearing, but they were quite firm that they needed to receive materials 7 days before the protest hearing. So we'll do it this way. And luckily we were meeting next week for cow anyway, so we'll just take care of this first.
That's very strange because in the past they have allowed us, but I mean, I believe y'all. I'm more so just irritated at ABCA because they've allowed this in the past.
I was surprised too. We'll have to call our new board member, Mr. Turner, and have some words, but not today. So that for next week, please keep it on your radars. I will also, one more administrative notice. May I say Happy Pride Month to everyone. If I may editorialize on that point, I do not believe this qualified as a Happy Pride on the U Street corridor due to one shooting, two stabbings, and one prevented attempted stabbing. And that's just what I'm aware of in the past 3 days. It was not a good time. Well, now it's raining, so I guess the blood will be washed off the sidewalk at 14th and U, but it was not lovely for several days over there as a reminder that there was mayhem, and I am extremely unhappy about it. Reminded me that last year at Pride on U Street, I was called a faggot and a bitch, and I didn't appreciate that. So there is, I think, some issues we need to resolve at many levels regarding the safety of our community generally. For all of that purpose, I have asked Commander Connors to join us as our guest speaker at our regular meeting, which will be July 9th at 6:30 p.m. virtual only. Waiting for him to, nope, he just emailed and he will make it there. So July 9th, we'll talk to the commander about what's going on up and down U Street. I saw a lot of police cars and we still had a shooting, two stabbings, and an attempted stabbing. All of that said, let's turn to our actual agenda, please. Well, good job, Commissioner Fay. The consent agenda, which contains the agenda for today, let's adopt the consent agenda per usual. Without objection, the consent agenda is adopted. First item of new business then, Commissioner Hanrahan, will turn to you first. The resolution regarding the Nightlife Noise Balance Amendment Act. You can, I think, be safe to assume that there are commissioners who have not been following super closely. I know this has generated lots of conversation at ABCR committee. So if you could give us the brief version of sort of the background, what this bill intends to do, and what the committee members have made of it, and especially like the like back and forth about adding some of the measurable specifics into the resolution. It'd be great if you could walk us through that.
Yes. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Yes. So actually, in general, this is in the world of ABCR, which we spend a lot of time on in our commission. There's a lot of really actually positive things happening that I think have probably been the worst from years of advocacy behalf of many commissioners here and neighbors in our area, and also even of ABCA themselves trying to advocate for things in which they think they could better serve the residents of DC. And so there are two amendments to two. There are two. There is there. Yeah. There's an amendment to. There's two amendments to existing DC code and bills that are have been introduced actually by the mayor's office, and these are now since the council member has taken them on to their Committee of Public Works and Operations. They are planning on trying to work the steps to make these amendments into law, which is the hope to be happening by the end of this year. And so these are actually, the overall theme of both of these amendments is this is extremely good news for, especially for ANC 1B, for neighbors, for constituents. There is a lot of challenge. There are a lot of challenges with the first one, the Noise Balance Amendment Act, really tries to get at challenges with number one, enforcement. I think we hear a lot that it's really hard to have verified noise complaints because it requires multiple inspectors and people going to people's homes and late at night. The director of Musali's even said this is not something he prefers, but this is kind of what the current legislation is, and this is kind of there's an attempt to kind of fix that or solve that by establishing what are called these noise restricted areas. So these are any public or private outdoor space, including an alley, courtyard, plaza, street, or sidewalk that is located within 15 feet of a building where an individual resides in an R, RF, or RA zone. And so this would kind of allow a applicant inspector to verify the sound or noise complaint coming from that space. Doesn't have to be in someone's home. So that's a huge, huge thing. Um, the other stuff that the amendment does is kind of adds, there's definitions specifically of sound and noise and music that people hear, but there's now going to be a specific mention of bass proposed in the legislation. Um, there are also uh, the existing fines for noise violations come in like a tiered list of how many you've received over the course of time, and they build up. Currently, the first level is a $250 fine, which is, for a nightclub or for a large establishment is fairly negligible amount of money. So this raises the amount of the fines for penalties. Um, and Yeah, I think those are like the three main things. It also states that licenses can also be suspended for up to 10 consecutive days for a license. And also the advocate board can now choose to suspend or restrict certain endorsement features of a license. So we often have trouble. We also deal with like summer gardens or sidewalk cafes that potentially have a lot of noise concerns, and the ABCA board now has the ability to rule that perhaps those components of those endorsements can be like limited um, in a board order if they have a lot of noise complaints. So it's generally a really really big win, I think, for the community. The ANC and also coming out of the committee discussions had a couple of ideas of tweaks of which it could be made more robust and holistic. Um, One thing that we would like the council to consider is including mixed use zones, such as the Arts 2 overlay. And so this is the main mixed use zone that's largely and adjacent to or very close by the alcohol license establishments on U Street and on 14th Street and in our commission area. And so the current noise restricted area only accounts for residential zoning, not for mixed use. So we're asking that that be considered to be included as part of the noise restricted area as well. Um, we are also asking that regarding the penalties, that any written warning issued that shall be documented by ABCA in its reporting system um, and be written down, and that no more than one written warning may be issued in a consecutive 2-year period, so that we hopefully actually the tier system moves forward and it doesn't just have written warnings be issued. Um, We're also asking to kind of consider ways in which the legislation can create enhanced review standards specifically for those endorsements. So not only just having the ABC board rule if it's on protest or something like that, but have ABCA itself kind of um, review, trigger certain things would trigger a more in-depth review, such as, being within 50 feet, an uncovered summer garden, or if there's going to be a summer garden, to know that um, there is a noise restricted area nearby, um, and kind of that review process. Um, and then, we're also asking that the noise complaints, as well as the written warnings, are kind of made transparent to the public. And so we know to kind of find out a kind of history of a noise complaint. There's kind of a FOIA request needed, and it's often hard to really verify how much noise complaints have gotten from the FOIA request. And we're kind of asking if there's a way in which that could be made more public. There's an online portal because having a new website now, so we're hoping to consider perhaps that could be made, maybe the even, not entirely public, maybe just the complainant or maybe the ANC, like we hear about shootings. Perhaps we could hear about, if there was a noise complaint in the area as well. Um, and then also asking that the ABC board, as well as the applicant inspectors, receive the regulatory training so they can be effective in enforcing and giving authority to the amendment. So that's the large overview of this one, um, which actually is only like 3 pages in length. The other one is like 50 or 30 pages in length. But does anyone have any questions on this Noise Balance Amendment Act? And I would like to motion to support this resolution.
Mhm.
I second.
There's a second. Commissioner Sycamore.
Hi, thanks for all this. And I kind of recognize where a lot of this is coming from. But I do worry a little bit about possible abuses of this, like just having arbitrary complaints against a business just because maybe they have a gripe with the owners, or there's some sort of um, a disgruntled employee or whatever. I'm kind of wondering if there's any sort of safeguards in this legislation that prevents that from happening. And I realize that there are legitimate concerns, that we have taken up before, but I'm just wondering what the safeguards are behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the complaints would be specifically targeted towards noise, and they would be verified by the applicant inspectors. So it wouldn't be just an arbitrary complaint to a business. It would be like specifically for noise, and then it would have to be verified by the inspectors. Um,
So if those complaints are being made public, would they be made public after they are substantiated, or is it going to be any complaint will just be posted? Because I feel like that again could be used as a weapon against businesses that are trying to do the right thing, but maybe have slipped up once or twice, or again have some sort of gripe with some community member or a disgruntled employee.
I think the ask is to be specific for the noise complaints, not general complaints. Um, I think,
Right, but I mean substantiated noise complaints.
Commissioner
yeah,
Hanrahan, can I respond very briefly by saying I
please.
think Commissioner Sycamore, the request around transparency and reporting is that the result of an investigation, should that investigation substantiate the claim or the complaint, would be posted. So it would not be a posting of all complaints made. It would be the posting of the ABCA investigators resolution slash, confirmation of a complaint.
Yeah, I'll point out
Got
that
it.
the draft resolutions is clear that substantiated noise violations be made transparent by
Got it.
sending the
Okay.
verified complaint to the SMD, et cetera. Yeah, yeah. So it's not just a list of,
Got
And
it. Okay.
I
Sorry,
think
I
a
must
lot
have
of
missed
a lot
that.
of this is driven by just, I think, a lot of folks feeling that they never know if their noise complaints are substantiated or not. It's kind of almost like this customer service kind of
Mhm.
situation.
Mm.
But I think that is a great point to bring about, the safeguarding of businesses. But I think the intent is still enough that there's protection there for them.
Okay. Thank
We've
you.
got Commissioner Kenzik on deck.
Do we have any concerns at all with changing some of these areas to multi-zone? And the reason I asked that is I thought, and I can be wrong, obviously, the residential it kind of trumps commercial in some certain settings. So if the whole purpose is to try to make sure we're enforcing these sounds, why are we opening up to a broader spectrum of having multi areas? Just a question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I mean I think a lot of folks do live in mixed use, multi arts two overlay zoning areas. It's especially like I think U Street has really been like there's been a lot of redevelopment in the last 10 or 15 years for that use. And I think some of the original legislation, perhaps didn't account for as much. There wasn't as much actual like housing there potentially as there is now with people living there. I think we do know a couple of neighbors examples who live in that area and they feel a little bit kind of like excluded from the noise substantiation process because they are in that overlay or in that typology. So I think it's
Understood.
just
Thank
a way
you.
to kind of include them.
Okay, got
Yeah, Alan, we've just been dealing, I mean, I know you know, we've just been dealing with a long-running situation where a club is next to somebody's bedroom, but they happen to be in in the arts overlay, not a residentially zoned property. And so, I guess from a legal perspective, it's kind of like SOL to that person, but it feels very unfair on the ground. I have Commissioner Fay.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge for the other commissioners who may not know just how much effort Commissioner Hanrahan and his committee put into this. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of exchange, a lot of work done outside of the committee meetings that brought this whole thing together. And so I just wanted to recognize the hard work on behalf of Commissioner Hanrahan, but also on the committee members that voiced this package of input.
Thank you for saying so. There was certainly a lot of effort that went into it. I want to ask you really quickly, Stephen, in the second operative clause, the second set of bullets, I'm really interested in number 3, when you mention creating enhanced review standards for summer gardens, sidewalk cafes, streeteries, entertainment endorsements, which I think all makes a lot of sense. But something that has come up a few times in the past few months in our conversations is the lack of any kind of proactive, like decibel readings or anything by ABCA before they issue, especially an initial license to a new applicant. We had this conversation around Icon a few times when we talked with the owner there about would you be amenable to having a proactive sound inspection before you even begin operations, so it's not the situation where we assume everything's going to be fine and then the onus is on the neighbors to come back 3 years later after suffering through a lot of noise to prove that there's a disturbance of the peace. Did you guys discuss in any way something that would, suggesting some kind of proactive inspection by ABCA, proactive sound testing when there is a license application within, say, 50 feet of a noise restricted area, not just the summer garden, but I mean, even interior stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that line, that bullet is trying to get at that by being a little bit proactive. Um, I think there's a little bit of, um, you know, some vagueness or some sense of, what exactly is that threshold or mechanism to really review those things. Maybe the council member's office and their great staff can really put that together in the legislation. Um, yeah, I think it's definitely like a goal, I think, of the committee. And I think we're trying to kind of push that way. Um, I think it deserves a little more expansion, but I think this is kind of what we have. This is our best attempt at it right now.
Would you accept an amendment there to add um, new applications? Create enhanced ABCA license review standards for summer garden, sidewalk cafe, streetery, or entertainment endorsements, and all new applications for those establishments located within 50 feet of a noise restricted area.
That sounds good with me. I would support that.
Okay. We can consider it a friendly amendment unless there's an objection. Going once, going twice. Okay. Let's add that in. Karen, please make notes. We don't forget to type that in later. Let's consider editorial authority as part of the original motion so that we can clean that up. I have Commissioner Sycamore next.
Yeah. So another big quick question, maybe I completely missed this. What does this legislation do as far as the threshold of noise? Does it increase it? Does it decrease it? Or is it just, I'm just wondering kind of where this is, where this will take us as opposed to where we are now as far as thresholds are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think the threshold, it's still kind of like the sense of uh, subjectivity in a way, in terms of, having the inspector verify it based on like where the sound, what they're hearing and what the sound is coming from, and how they're able to kind of, like really hear it. Yeah, I think, it doesn't have so much about the, specific kind of, objectivity of like a decibel, level or reader. We've heard from Musali that sometimes that can be kind of tricky for folks.
Yeah.
Um,
If I can
yeah.
jump in real quick and just say, Commissioner Sigmore, I know that when we were having an issue with thirst, it was very problematic at times that the noise around 10 or 11 o'clock at night to have people coming in the homes constantly. So a lot of the inspectors would just go to the door and say, we come in your home, and the people are like, no, we don't want you in our home right now. We don't want your dirty boots walking through our whole place and into our bedroom again. So I think some of this is actually a positive thing where the inspectors can't just pull up and leave because they say, we can't get in the house. I don't think really it's changing too much of what the legal standpoint already sets or what is set, but it's actually giving, I guess, people holding people in clubs and bars and other things more accountable, even from a reasonable standpoint, and not having to be intrusive into going to someone's home. And I think that's what one of the best parts of this whole part of this legislation is. So I don't know if that helps. Thanks.
See, it's just the word subjective is kind of what's got me. I don't like voting on things that are subjective, that don't have an actual measurable goal. Unless, if Commissioner Fay, do you have something to add?
Yeah, if I can try really quickly. So there's
Yeah,
two,
please.
there's essentially two standards. There's two standards that are in place. One is essentially an ABCA standard, one is a DOB standard. This one doesn't touch the DOB standard. That's one of the reasons why the committee asked for this to be expanded to include potential mixed use, Arts 2, et cetera. But what this bill does is it specifically addresses noise violations from ABCA licensed establishments, or noise issues rather, from ABCA licensed establishments in residentially zoned, so RF, R, and RA zoned, which is that noise restricted area. What it does, to Commissioner Kensick's point, is that it changes the standard. I think it's actually less subjective. It becomes, in my mind, a bit binary, where at 15 feet from the property line of an RF, R, or RA zoned residence, you cannot hear music, you cannot feel bass. The current standard is that you cannot hear it inside the home. And that's what Commissioner Kensick was saying, is people then have to go inside the home. It consumes a tremendous amount of ABCA resources. It requires up to 3 inspectors to be able to be part of that visit. Now you're able to have that serviced by 1 inspector, which helps to distribute the workload across an already stretched workforce. And then the thing that remains kind of a little bit loose here on this particular amendment is the mixed use zones, which would still be subject to the DOB codes, but are not addressed specifically related to ABCA enforcement here. So I think it's actually more precise rather than less.
No, that makes it much more clear. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
I'll add that after going through several sound tests, and no one knows it better than Commissioner Fay, we feel like the decibel reader is objective, but it's so fraught with other problems that it doesn't even give us the sort of gold standard that we wish it would either. I've got Frank Chauvin. 1 second. You can unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
I'd like to thank the commission for taking this up and taking the time necessary. This has been, I've been looking at the history of the failure of this having to enter a home to find and adjudicate noise violations. And this error in the code, the error that has not served our community up and down U Street and on 9th Street for at least 25 years. I'm going to find the history and find the standard, but it's at least 25 years that people have been suffering. So this is long overdue. I'd like to thank you. Secondly, yes, on the application process pre-review for potential noise, and maybe it's a 90-day into a opening period, because that's when you're really going to have the use. So maybe it's both. Just as a suggestion, not enough time has been taken on that very important topic. So I thank the chair for raising it. And then lastly, the mixed use, adding at least Arts 2 is imperative, and that is for this reason. Again, these are mixed use zones, not just commercial zones, right? Not just commercial. And a block from my home, I have a poor landlord that can't rent his unit because both sides blast music and the tenants leave in a year. So if you can understand that it's a mixed use, not just a commercial use, that mixed use ownership and residential ownership are hurting in this corridor, and especially on the 1900 block of 9th Street. So I thank you for including that provision. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further comments, any final points before we move to vote on this? Okay.
I know Commissioner Harris had her hand up at one point. Does she still need to talk?
I assume no.
Nope,
I
I'm
moved.
good.
I moved a
All right.
question.
Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the resolution as presented and very lightly amended, please raise your Zoom hands. I have 7 in favor. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Hanrahan.
Thank you all. Yeah, thank you for all the hard work.
Let's reprise that. Moving on to the resolution in support of the DC Hospitality Amendment Act.
Yes, this is another
You want to share again? Okay.
yes, sharing
Do us a favor
again.
and zoom in a little bit there, would you?
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Beautiful.
Okay. Yes, so this was also introduced by the mayor. I wish I had the bullet up, but I don't now, but it's actually like there's like a lot of there's like 30 pages of legislation, so there's a lot of information here. Mostly, it seems mostly a lot of it was kind of, I'm just, very high level, probably don't take my word for it, but it was like about kind of like pop-ups and certain like business practices that started during COVID that just kind of make it a little bit more flexible for alcohol licensing and generally like pro businesses. I think they summarize it as like cementing certain post-pandemic practices for um alcohol licensing. A lot of that like it's like I'm thinking like hotels or like art galleries, which doesn't seem like a main focal point of our commission area. But I think one part of this bill, which is which is fairly impressive amount of is talking about settlement agreements specifically, and there's a lot more provisions that this bill proposes to include in terms of enforceable provisions of settlement agreements to not have subjectivity and to have better thresholds, like decibel limits on settlement agreements can be included and enforced. Security plans, settlement agreements can have security plans, restrictions on specific endorsements of licenses, the limiters placed on music can be included into settlement agreements. So these are things I think we've been putting into settlement agreements, but apparently it's a little bit of a gray zone if they're actually enforceable or not. So this really kind of spells it out that they can become enforceable, and I think that's a huge win for ANC 1B. And we also had a recommendation from one of our committee members that we include in this resolution. The potentially that council could look into adding a modest set of alcohol license application surcharges for new applications, substantial changes, renewals as a surcharge that could really be like a dedicated line of funding going for community engagement and technical support efforts at ABCA for ANCs and other neighborhood partners. Knowing just like the onus of making settlement agreements is a fairly time extensive process. I think, even businesses themselves like aren't exactly sure of the process, and the staff at ABCA is great, but if there could be, a dedicated line of funding there to even have like another full-time employee or upgrade their website as they are doing, I think that could be helpful. And I think there could potentially be some funding that could come from these surcharges for applications. So for that consideration as well. Yes, I think that's mostly it.
Okay, very good. Mr. Holden, is that a question for now, or are you still voting? Okay.
Still voting, I guess.
Fabulous. Thank you. Stephen, would you like to move the resolution?
Yes, I would like to motion to support this resolution of the DC in support of B 26648, the DC Hospitality Amendment Act of 2026.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Questions, comments, debate?
Sorry, maybe just another quick shout out to David Menny and Council Members Office for all of their help in prepping 1B with insights on the important elements that were related to Ward 1. This was a beast of a bill, lots and lots and lots of pages. So thank you to them and for Stephen again for grinding through all that.
And perhaps to Commissioner Hanrahan and the ABCR committee for, I think, the work that led up to our support of this, which is their efforts to standardize our settlement agreements over the past year and a half, and to make sure that all of our settlement agreements have these important provisions in them. It actually would be nice if we didn't have to do quite so much of that work, and the law did it itself. Okay, anything else? Seeing nothing. David Menny adds most credit should go to Nicole Bramstead on our team. Thank you all for the valuable feedback. Thank you, sir. Okay, let us go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the resolution as presented, please raise your Zoom hands. I see 6 in favor. All those opposed, please raise your Zoom hands. Any wishing to note an abstention? That's an abstention?
Yes.
Okay. 6-0 with 1 abstention. The resolution has passed. Thank you very much. And the final item on our agenda today, we have a resolution from the Economic Development Committee regarding the restoration of U Street Performance Parking Zone funds. By means of background, I'll note very quickly, and then I'll turn to Commissioner Fay, the chairman of that committee, that we had a presentation, what was that, 4 or 5 months ago from DDOT to talk about the first, this is the last time we met in person at the Josephine Butler building, talk about the first year of the, talk about the first year of the performance parking zone around U Street. I think everyone should be familiar with how it operates, the sort of fluctuating demand-based pricing. At that meeting, we had Laura and I think 2 others from DDOT talking about the performance over the first year, notably not including the financial performance because they didn't have the facts and figures yet at that time. Subsequently, we've understood that the CFO has certified how much money the performance parking zone has generated in the first year, as well as how much can be relied on an ongoing basis every fiscal year going forward. And so with that information in hand, the council member's office has been busy figuring out how to spend money, which is fun, especially in current fiscal picture, to have some money to use and more than was anticipated, I think is fair to characterize. As part of their efforts to invest that money wisely, there was an effort to spend some of that money to set up an automated curbside enforcement system. You may have been in cities that have this, where there is there's a camera on each parking space that's curbside, and it sort of does metering and ticketing automatically instead of having to have a human meter maid go around and check the times of all the cars being parked, right? It sort of senses that there's a vehicle there, sets a timer once you've paid, and then if the car is still there once the time expires, takes a picture of the license plate and issues a ticket. This is something that we've been trying to bring to DC for a while. And so the council member's office suggested using some of the U Street Performance Parking Zone money to get the automated curbside enforcement program off the ground. I'll note that the council member herself has switched on her camera. Welcome to our meeting. Thank you very much for your time tonight. And we also have David and Nicole from the council member's office on the line, since this proposal has generated lots of questions and a fair amount of consternation. That's largely because the U Street Performance Parking Zone money, when the performance parking zone was created, was intended to support projects along U Street within a few specified categories. And so this shift to supporting the citywide rollout of the automated curbside program seemed to be pilfering some money from the U Street corridor for district-wide priorities, not specifically U Street related priorities. I'll pause there. I don't think any of the facts I just laid out were incorrect. There are varying interpretations of them. So I would like to turn it over to Commissioner Fay, the mover of this resolution, which I should note has passed in a neighboring commission already, and maybe capture for us what the conversation has been at the Economic Development Committee. And then I'd love to go to the council member and or her staff for corrections or tweaks or differing views in case we've misinterpreted something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do thank the council member and her team for being here. Appreciate the work that we've been able to do with David Benny back and forth over the past really year and a half. The Economic Development Committee of ANC 1B has been talking about the Neighborhood Management Authority bill that was submitted for council review by the council member in January of 2025. We had 2 community hearings on that bill back in February and again in March of 2025. And so it's really been through those very extensive discussions that the committee first really started to pay close attention to the performance parking zone funds. We had reached out several times to both DDOT and to the council member's office for updates and status checks on how the fund was performing, what dollars were coming in, et cetera. And we fully appreciated that it was taking time for those calculations to happen and for those dollars to ultimately to be tallied up. The thing that we ultimately were told by the council member's office, which we thought was really fantastic news, is that the office of the CFO, as they are required, certified a fund balance in that performance parking zone fund of $2.75 million for fiscal year 25 and 26. We're currently in fiscal year 26, so I think they were counting just a little bit ahead to the end of this current fiscal year. But 2.75 million captured in that fund through the performance parking zone. We went back and, of course, looked at the legislation, which I'm frankly grateful to the council member for sponsoring and for championing. This commission has voted twice in support of that performance parking zone and the associated fund, largely because we were championing an investment in U Street, which we believe is very much needed. And so what we were then paying attention to in the first reading of the council's budget was that Councilmember Nadeau's office submitted an amendment that moved $2.55 million of funds that her previous legislation had allocated to the U Street area parking zone and moved them away for use in other parts of the city for a different program. We appreciate that some of those cameras are going to go on U Street, but across all the commercial areas in the district, across all 8 wards, U Street will be a small beneficiary of that overall program. And so we discussed and wrote a resolution asking that those funds be restored back to U Street to their original purpose. Our resolution, which I will pull up after we get through some discussion, provides fairly broad latitude in terms of how council may reappropriate those funds back to U Street for their use. To acknowledge, the council member's office did send over a proposed draft that I imagine we'll be discussing and asking questions on as our discussion progresses here, to think about whether that proposal, kind of meets the threshold of restoring the funds back to U Street. So that's the topic. There have been a number of folks in the business community who have been, a part of this discussion. There have been other ANCs that have been part of this discussion. I know the council member's office has been part of this discussion. And to Chair Duramo's point, our goal tonight is to really develop a shared fact base, and then a path forward as we talk about how we provide appropriate support and funding to the U Street area. I'm going to hold putting my resolution up because I know we've got some discussion in terms of background before we get to that. And then we can put the resolution up, which again gives broad latitude to how we solve the problem. But I think it's important that we spend some time talking about it to make sure we're all on the same page.
Do you want to turn to the council member's office first, or do you want to read through the resolution so we have a basis for discussion?
I can, yeah. Give me 1 second here just to share. Okay, so the resolution is opposing the transfer of funds from the U Street performance parking zone to other purposes. I did as much copying and pasting as I could. I wanted to be as true to the language that I was reading as possible. Whereas the legislation establishes a non-lapsing performance parking fund, the fund which will be administered by the director of DDOT. All parking meter revenue within the greater U Street parking zone established by the legislation that exceeds the baseline within the zone as of October 1st shall be deposited in the fund. We've now understood what that dollar amount is. Whereas the monies in the fund, after initial program costs and ongoing maintenance costs have been paid, shall be used solely for the following purposes within and immediately adjacent to the greater U Street performance parking zone: place management initiatives, public space maintenance, public safety initiative, transportation safety and public space improvements, and support for businesses. Whereas ANC 1B passed 2 resolutions in support of the U Street Performance Parking Zone and Fund to help provide much needed investment in our local U Street economy. Whereas the District of Columbia, I'm so sorry. Whereas the District of Columbia Office of the Chief Financial Officer has recognized an existing fund balance in the fund of $2.75 million. And I should clarify for fiscal years 25 and 26, and further recognizes recurring revenue from greater U Street parking performance zone of $1.38 million per year beginning in FY 27. As of June 1, 2026, it's kind of an arbitrary date, but it seemed like it was close enough to the June 9th date that we're talking about. No monies in the fund have been allocated or expended for the intended purposes within and immediately adjacent to the greater U Street performance parking zone. No investments made in place management, no investments made in public space maintenance, no investments made in public safety initiatives, no investments made in transportation, safety and public space improvements, and no investments been made in to support businesses. Whereas on June 9th, Councilmember Nadeau and Allen submitted to DC Council for its consideration the Nadeau-Allen Amendment number 1 to Bill 26661 for the fiscal year 2027 budget support, which was adopted by Council, 7 yeas, 1 present, and 5 nays. The amendment takes $2.55 million from the Performance Parking Program Fund and reallocates it to a DDOT program outside of the greater U Street Performance Parking Zone, making those funds unavailable for investment as intended by the original legislation. Council members Nadeau and Allen did not solicit any community input or feedback on the amendment, nor did the council members provide any opportunity for community comments on the amendment. The greater U Street community is outraged, although I have been asked to change that to something less outrageous, by the council members' actions to take monies allocated to the local economy, which is greatly in need of placemaking and public investment, without providing an opportunity to the community to advocate for itself. Therefore, let it be resolved that ANC 1B asks Council to amend the Nadeau-Allen Amendment number 1 to Bill 26661 for the fiscal year 2027 budget support at its next meeting on the FY 27 budget to restore the $2.55 million to the fund for use as intended by the original legislation. And so this was passed by ANC 2G. It was discussed at Thursday night's Economic Development Committee meeting. It was passed there with support to take forward for discussion and consideration by our ANC 1B tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councilmember, we will turn to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, commissioners. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to have the discussion publicly. I know that you've already had many conversations with my team on this topic, and I'm so happy to be here tonight with you. First of all, let me say it has been my pleasure. I'm very proud of creating the performance parking zone with dedicated funding for U Street, and also introducing the Neighborhood Management Authority bill to support a place management entity on U Street, as well as supporting a bid for U Street, not only now, but multiple times in the past, when I was on 1B and when I was chair of 1B. So here's the clarifying information that I think is most important for you to consider tonight. And I think perhaps the way this has been explained to you in the past has just not been very clear. No money has been taken from this fund. And the version of the LBA that was circulated tonight by the chairman will make that all the more clear. No money has been taken from the Performance Parking Zone Fund. The amendment that I moved on the 9th is the amendment that actually allows the funds that have been sitting there that you have asked about, that I have asked about, where is it, how much is actually what makes it possible to fund a place management entity for U Street. Before, those funds were just kind of sitting away hidden. They weren't even like counted towards the budget at all anywhere. The chairman didn't even know about them because they were just off in their own little world. And so in order to make them available for U Street, we had to move this amendment. Now, where the confusion lies is, and this is like a very, I will say, like esoteric function of contracting in the District of Columbia. DDOT has been trying to get this curbside enforcement program off the ground. In fact, it's something that I know this ANC has passed multiple resolutions about over the years. In order to move the contract forward, they had to show there was a balance in a fund that they could actually pull from if needed, but they don't need it at the outset. So basically, by allowing them to be authorized to use funds from the performance parking zone, they are allowed to enter in the contract to do the curbside enforcement. They don't think they will need to use any of the funds. And with some additional language that we're adding to the second reading of the BSA, if they use any of the funds, they will have to replenish them. So first and foremost, I think it's important to know no money has been taken, and we don't expect any money to be taken. But if any money is taken, legally, DDOT will be required to replenish those funds dollar for dollar. There is a huge surplus in there right now, which is great news. And what our amendment does is make it available for the bid, which we're very excited about. And we have been working together with the leadership of the future bid, and looking at their budget and identifying exactly what they would need to spend year over year to ensure there are funds there. We are also at second reading going to make clear that the fund can be used to support the operating expenses of the African American Civil War Memorial Museum, if that is something that the bid and the Neighborhood Management Authority want to do. And so we're getting creating more clarity at second reading on these things, but those are the basics. The way the amendment is phrased, the one that was passed on the 9th, it says up to that amount in the fund may be used to support the program. But like I said, no money is actually being taken out. It's just an authorization to allow them to move forward with that contract, because the CFO will not allow them to move forward with the contract if there's no like balance to work against. And just in terms of the timing, there was no money in the fund June 1st. So if you're thinking about how you want to word the resolution, you might want to keep that in mind. But I would say that given that, it, in my mind, doesn't make a ton of sense the way the resolution is worded, because it assumes that money's been taken away from U Street and it hasn't. So I hope that this is clarifying and helpful. Happy to take questions at the pleasure of the chair.
I appreciate that. Commissioner Fay, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I want to make sure, right, that I'm understanding clearly. And again, I really appreciate your taking the time to be here. We've been seeking clarity as a community for some time about the balance that's available. So at some point, it might be worth a brief forensic audit to understand when the money appeared. It didn't just accumulate on a given day, although it probably was certified on a given day. I think my more kind of important question to you is, if the 2.75 is not if the 2.75 is not being used, why is it not being allocated to the intended purposes on U Street? So that would be one question. And the second is, and I've met with Frank, this whole group has met with Frank and are very, very supportive of his endeavors at the museum. The allocation that's made in the revised document holds off on allocations until FY28. I'd love to see an allocation made in FY27 so that he is getting dollars sooner, he's able to open sooner, he's able to have stability sooner. So probably the broad question of just understanding the nuances of having 2.75 million available in a bank account with the commitment that it's not going to be spent, but also unable to allocate it. And then championing some allocation, perhaps at a different amount, to the museum in 27 to allow for more immediate support.
Sure. Well, with Chairman Mendelson, I secured $600,000 for the museum this year. So they'll be getting that shortly in the supplemental budget, which is what they need to finish construction and open. Dr. Smith, of course, is a very important leader in our community and is the former Ward 1 council member. And his project on U Street is important for our history, and it's also an incredible anchor. So the money is for a place management entity. There's currently no place management.
It's actually for a lot of different things, right? I mean, when you wrote the legislation yourself, and it's meant for a lot of different investments. I don't want to bog us down with discussions about neighborhood management authority. I will send you and Mr. Meny the summaries of the community feedback that we'd already collected. But I get concerned when you take the conversation solely down the path of neighborhood management authority and these
Oh, I
funds
didn't. I said a
meant
place
more
management
broadly.
entity, Commissioner. I said a place management entity. Just to be clear here, I hope you heard me say that I support the bid. I have supported the bid every time it has been proposed for U Street. Every time. Every time.
I've also read the NMA language that subsumes the bid under
Commissioner,
the
could you
NMA
please stop interrupting me? I was trying to answer your
for a
question. Thank you.
response, which I gave.
Okay, so I have been working directly with the bid leadership. The goal is to help them. The reason I set up this fund was so that U Street could have a place management entity, whichever it is. I don't care which it is. U Street needs this desperately. And having watched a bid fail multiple times, I could not assume that a bid would succeed. And so I did a major investment with community input where we did a whole needs assessment and came together with a proposal. And that is how we ended up with the parking management zone. That is how we ended up with the neighborhood management authority bill, which, by the way, is not just for U Street, it's also for Columbia Heights, which doesn't have the benefit of someone trying to form a bid. Okay, so with the funding that I have set aside with this amendment, the bid will have an operating budget as soon as they get through their process. We have set aside exactly what they said they needed based on their budget. And one of the things that I'm really excited about with this fund is that this bit of money is actually what makes the bid pencil out. The challenge the bid has always had is that the mix of uses on U Street is not diverse enough to produce enough tax revenue to actually sustain a bid. And so it has made over the years property owners wary of being heavily taxed in order to sustain a bid. The money from the performance parking zone actually offsets that and makes it more appealing to property owners so that they will be more likely to sign on and help the bid get the number of signatories they need to move forward with the process. This is really important work. And a resolution against this amendment that Alan and I passed is actually a resolution against that funding for the bid. So I just want to be really clear here. Without this amendment, that money sits in that mystery pot. Okay. It was just out there. And yeah, we can do whatever forensic accounting you want. The money is now available. It is in our pot. And it is, none has been taken out, just so you understand what I'm saying. So none is going to be taken out unless DDOT really needs it. But they haven't indicated that they needed it. They just needed some collateral to put up against this contract, if you think of it that way. Okay. So yeah, you are right. I misspoke. There are other ways that we can spend these funds. And that's fine. The funds are going to be in that pot. So I think that's the bottom line. There seems to be a big misunderstanding. The money is still there. The money is still for U Street. I am ride or die U Street. Any suggestions otherwise are just wrong. I'm so happy to be here with you tonight. But if we can function on the basis of those facts, I think that the conversation will flow a little more smoothly.
We've got a couple of questions in the chat that are getting right at this point. So I want to belabor it for a second. People have asked, if they don't expect to use the funds, why do they need it? Or why do they ask for so much money if they don't need all of the money? Can you just take us through that one more time? Like, why do you need collateral to be put up for an expense?
Well, I wish that I could explain all the ins and outs of why the OCFO needs all the things that they need, but for this program to be stood up, DDOT was required to have some part of what we have in our fund, a little bit of that amount for collateral, for lack of a better word, to say, yeah, if this program ends up costing us money, then we can tap into this. But they actually expect that this is going to generate a substantial amount of revenue every year. So there really isn't a concern about that. And we will make it clear in the second reading of the BSA that if they do need to spend any upfront, that they replenish it, because this is a revenue generating program, but the OCFO is a real stickler about this. They don't let you claim any revenue until a program is up and running. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's real revenue. We'll put it in the financial plan. We've fought a lot of fights with the OCFO over logic, and we don't usually win. So in this case, we said, DDOT will help you out. You could use it as collateral. We know you're not really going to need to spend it. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I know, but I'm not sure we stated this explicitly. We've been talking about this now for a couple of weeks back and forth, and your team has been working with the general counsel and DDOT and others to write in that language about a repayment guarantee, which I understand is now, or you will move that at the next legislative meeting to include that as an amendment to your previous amendment, the language about the repayment.
But the second reading of the BSA and the date.
The second reading of the
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And that didn't attract any opposition from DDOT or Councilmember Allen or anyone else involved in the conversations, is my understanding.
No, DDOT and Allen are both just really delighted that we helped them solve this problem. And I think one of the reasons we felt there was a lot of synergy here, especially, is because like ANC 1B has been really on it about this issue. And other parts of Ward 1 too. But I mean, you guys more than anybody see these like nightlife parking issues, and it's just, we never have enough personnel. Even with the nightlife task force, there's never enough personnel to deal with these issues. And automating it really helps with that. And other cities have really seen a huge change in behavior and revenue capture from it. And we're kind of behind in our country on this.
Right. The language that I saw earlier today, just for everyone's awareness, added a line which reads, provided that any funds used pursuant to this paragraph shall be replenished by program revenue, referring to the automated curbside program as set forth in section blah, 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 blah. There isn't a deadline or anything associated with that. How do you think through whether you have confidence that will happen, or it will happen within a reasonable amount of time? Obviously, the investments we'd like to see in U Street, we would like to see yesterday, but certainly not 5 fiscal years down the road.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, I think is really important, is that with this budget amendment, there will be at least $1.3 million available every year and a fund reserve of about 3 million, all of which will be available for investment in U Street. And I think if I'm recalling correctly, the bid needs about 700,000 a year to augment the other funds they'll be raising. So there really is a lot of money in there, and you know, it can be for placemaking, it can be for safety, it can be for bike share, it can kind of be really for whatever the community entity decides. And I think that's what's really exciting is like there's nowhere else in Ward 1 that's going to have this level of funding to invest in the neighborhood yet. Columbia Heights will, but you guys are the only ones with a pot so far, and it's ready. It's ready to go for you guys.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat. Does DDOT have no other accounts? Why should our community act as the backer for DDOT? Sort of, can you talk through why is it that this was the pot to draw on for the collateral?
I don't want to get too far into that because I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't want to misspeak. Happy to get back to whoever that is, but it came down to the wire and that money was not available to DDOT anywhere else. And so there were actually community members that have worked at DDOT that thought it was a good idea and thought that there was a good synergy there and came to us about it.
From this community.
Yep.
Okay, you're saying there are U Street community members unknown to this ANC who lobbied your office to give away U Street money for a citywide DDOT program. I just want to make sure because
Commissioner, the money
Councilmember,
is
now
not.
you are cutting me off.
Yeah, but
One
you're
of the
also.
things that
I'm cutting you
stated-
off because you're repeating inaccuracies, sir.
Council member, you did not have a single public discussion on this amendment with any member of this ANC, save a phone call from David Meny to myself and the chair at 4:30 p.m. the day before you submitted your amendment. And I don't think that it is appropriate that these types of dollars are reallocated without some kind of community engagement.
Commissioner, they're still there. They haven't been reallocated.
Well, they're certainly not being allocated to the U Street corridor.
Sir, they have 1.3 million a year with a $3 million surplus, and they are still in the fund. They have not left the fund. There is no intention for them to leave the fund. If they were leaving the fund, I agree, a public conversation would have been warranted. The conversation that was had was more of an FYI because this is really an administrative thing. Nobody has taken anything from U Street.
Can we jump to the other commissioners' questions? Maybe move the conversation on a little bit.
I've got Commissioner Kensick in the queue.
Yeah, Councilmember, thank you for joining us tonight. In your 11 years as council member and also as 1B05 commissioner, how come this is just suddenly like coming to light now? Like your fight and knowing the U Street area and being a part of this 1B area. What's taken so long?
I don't understand the question.
Okay.
Could you ask that a different way?
Yes, sure. You've been a council member for 11 years and you've been in the area and representing 1B05 directly. So you're right around the corner from 14th and U. So my question is why now are we putting lease into play? Why hasn't anything been done sooner? You said that this is something that's been a long stride of the economy, of the community, and yourself, and you being the head lead. Why is it taking this long?
That is such a great question, Commissioner. Thank you for rephrasing that so that I could understand what you meant. So,
no problem.
Multiple attempts have been made at the bid over the years, and I have always supported those. Usually a bid is initiated by businesses, right? Because it's essentially a self-taxing entity. And it's always been important to me as an elected leader not to force that type of self-taxation onto a business. And that's why I pursued another avenue I first created a main street for U Street while the second attempt at the bid was happening. And when that didn't work, that was when I invested in a needs assessment for U Street. I hired somebody to go out and survey community leaders and business leaders and come up and write a report and make a recommendation. And that recommendation was actually something a little bit different than a bid. It was a neighborhood management authority. And that was the bill that I introduced. In the meantime, there was another attempt at the bid. Now, at first, that attempt at the bid was a different geographic area, which would not have served U Street per se. It would have served maybe the east end of U Street and down 7th towards the convention center. But after spending more time in the community, the leadership of the bid formation committee determined that aligning the bid boundaries with Greater U Street actually made more sense for what they were trying to accomplish. And I've been so pleased to support that effort. So it's certainly an iterative process. But I am very confident that without the performance parking zone that I created, this latest attempt at the bid would not be as far along as it is. And I do think that this funding underlying the bid is what's ultimately going to allow it to succeed, because the entities that are going to elect to tax themselves will realize they don't have to tax themselves at such a high rate to make the bid sustainable. So that's how it all came together. And I look forward to any contributions you might have to our efforts.
Thank you. I think that's great. Even that this is a great thing, and whether it be late, or at least it's happening. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to press pause for a second here. I want to turn back to the text of the resolution, because I do think there's this central discrepancy here.
Sure.
Where the resolution, if we can, I don't know if you have a copy of it there. I suspect
you want
not,
me to pull it back
I
up?
apologize. Sure.
Yep. Hold on one second.
Thank you.
Yep. And Miguel, where were you going?
Page 2. Perfect.
Okay, good.
So in the second clause, we can see on our screens there, when it says, whereas the amendment strips 2.5 million from the PPP fund and reallocates it, seems to be technically incorrect. And I think this is really kind of the kernel of the controversy here. And sort of similarly, in the final whereas clause, the council member's actions to take monies allocated is also maybe technically incorrect, right? Because we're talking about leveraging the monies as opposed to spending the monies.
Let me try this. In that second whereas clause right here, the amendment strips. I have a 401k, which does not have $2.55 million in it, but it is there. As long as I'm not foolish with it, I know that it's going to be there in 10 years or whatever period of time I need it. In this particular circumstance, I'm not sure that I am not hearing, I'll speak for myself, I am not hearing a guarantee from the council member that in 2 years' time, $2.55 million will be there and ready and available to the U Street corridor. The other thing I am hearing the council member say is that $2.55 million is definitively not available for investment in FY27. So I think my interpretation, and I might be struggling, right? And I would appreciate the council member's clarification. If the 2.55 million is definitively not available to U Street in FY27, and there is no guarantee as to the time that $2.55 million would be available for reinvestment in U Street, what should we be calling it? Are we putting it into escrow with the office of the CFO where they will be tracking an account? I don't think there's an expectation that it would earn interest, but that would be nice. But where are we putting these dollars such that they are known to, reported on, tracked by the U Street community, so that we can all be comfortable that they are not being taken and that rather they are being put up as collateral for this other program?
Let me read this question from the chat, which asks it in a different way. I think that's helpful. Can the funds be spent on U Street initiatives while they're being used as collateral for DDOT? Are they functionally locked up, or can they be spent with the acknowledgement that they can also be drawn on by DDOT?
Can I make kind of a clarifying comment that
Sure.
I'm thinking about it? So, uh, one of the problems with U Street, I think, the corridor, is because it crosses through different neighborhoods with different interests. There hasn't been a way to funnel or uniformly apply money to the corridor in the way that the neighborhood works and the way that like would right? Like we've talked about banners, we've talked about placemaking, but there's nothing that could like really do that right now. So kind of it's felt like a long time, but it really hasn't been that long for like when they started the performance zone and then saw how it worked, then increased the size, and now it's fully operational. And now they've certified how much money it's making and where the like can fund a fund even, right? Like that's only happened recently. And so now what I'm kind of thinking of it as, and I brought this up at the economic development meeting, kind of without an organization, the bid, an NMA, some sort of entity that isn't just DDOT, because DDOT doesn't work on neighborhoods. OP doesn't even work on neighborhoods, really. They make like a plan that could be implemented in 30 years. We're still talking about the Duke plan, right? Um, like we need an active operational group organization that cares about the neighborhood and their job is to do what the NOMA bid does, right? And NOMA has done a lot of incredible stuff. Like their Parks Foundation built out all those parks from like some of them were like random lots, right? And because they had creative people working on it and that was their job to do it, now there's all these great parks in Noma. And so like I'm kind of thinking of this money as like this is the seed fund for the bid or the neighborhood group that will work on this. And like I hear some frustration from community members or other commissioners who are like, well, why hasn't the money been spent yet? Well, I think if we just started spending the money without a cohesive vision for it, it's going to be wasted money. We might get some trash cans, we might get some banners, but it's not going to be like how to transform the neighborhood in the way that I think we all need it to be. And so this is like seed money for that. And if we're using this as collateral, but in the bill for this other program, which will partially benefit U Street if it's loading zones and automated enforcement, which will bring more money to the city and make the streets safer because there's no double parking and people parking in bike lanes and stuff like that. Um, then like that money will be like spent better in the neighborhood if it then is funding the bid or a group that's actually here and not just piecemeal um, put here and there. So I think we need to be strategic. Like there needs to be an organization that's spending this money smartly.
Councilmember Nadeau has clarified in the chat that yes, the funds are available to U Street even while they're being used as collateral. So if I can tie that comment in together with what Commissioner Holden just said, are there plans for spending this money on U Street projects other than NMA or bid in this fiscal year, or no? They've only recently been certified, so it's probably going to fall into the next fiscal year.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know who would initiate that at this point, right? Like Commissioner Holden raised a bunch of really good points. And I would just tie that into the journey I described that we've all been on, or that at least I've been on since 2010 with U Street, which is that like this collective vision is coming together the way that it was always meant to. And I think that that's the key here. One, if I may, so funds have just been certified, and DDOT has some ideas for a spend plan, but I think the commissioner is correct on all of that. And this is way more than we thought it would raise, and we really do need to protect that. So I would just caution against trying to like go full bore to try to spend some now. Um, if I may, I do have a suggestion for you, Mr. Chairman, on the resolution, which is I think something that's really important that, hasn't been done yet that I've committed to, but I think is important to hear from the ANC on. At the second reading of the BSA, I will be moving an amendment or incorporating language to clarify that if DDOT does have to spend any money, that they pay it back to the fund. And I think the ANC being on record insisting on that, even though I'm going to put it into law, you could insist that it be put into law, or you could insist that the council make it so, if you are accepting any feedback.
Yeah, I still want to dwell on this point about the terms strips and take, which I think don't
Yeah,
describe what's happening.
yeah, agreed.
And I do think we should also work in some language about the repayment, since it is a realistic prospect and something that we all want to see happen.
Yeah.
So if I don't know if Commissioner Fay, you want to work on some alternative language while we take a few Q&As, or do we
Yeah,
need to discuss?
maybe let me just clarify to what Commissioner Holden said, which I agree with wholeheartedly, and he raised it eloquently at our Economic Development Committee meeting. I'm not fighting to spend the dollars today. I'm fighting to protect them. And so what I'm looking to do is to clarify what is really going to be there and what is not. And that gets down to kind of the operative word. And so I appreciate, right, Councilmember Nato being here to talk about the nature of the collateralization of the dollars. I appreciate what Commissioner Holden says, which is it doesn't make sense for us to be racing out and spending these dollars willy-nilly. And I think we want to be responsible. I want to make sure that these dollars are available. That's my primary objective. And so, I'm happy for the council member to even advise as to what language she would like, in the sense that the 2.75 is preserved and will be, if tapped, repaid. And then I think the thing that would be helpful, council member, maybe you can answer a technical question, and that is, if any dollars were to be used, um, would that be in fiscal year 27 only, or is that 2.55 being put up as both 27 and 28 collateral? When does the program officially go live? The DDOT automated curbside program.
Let me get you that answer while we're still together.
Okay. Because I think that gives us and others certainty.
Yeah.
That
Sorry, I've got it.
Okay.
It's only for 2027, only for FY 27.
Okay. And then the program would begin generating revenues in 28.
Yeah.
Okay. And how would we get clarity around the likelihood of their actual expenditure? I mean, it sounds like the way that the second half of your amendment is written around the automated performance parking, it is the ability to contract with a third party that would be essentially coming in and installing all of the equipment, and then probably recouping their costs off of the first year, 2, 3 years of revenue before generating additional incremental revenue for the city.
I think they already identified $600,000 in this fiscal year in their own budget for startup costs. I don't think they expect it'll take 2 to 3 years to start generating revenue.
Let me clarify that point really quickly. Since this is written into the BSA, DDOT's ability to use this money as collateral only lasts the fiscal year that the budget's in effect. So they have to make use of it, if they need to at all, within the next fiscal year. And if they don't, if they still need that collateral ability for some reason, in the following fiscal year, it has to be written into the budget again.
Yeah, not our problem.
Okay. So there's sort of a one-time use in a sense like that.
It's such a moneymaker. I mean, I hate to say it like that because, a lot of people don't like tickets as revenue, but I happen to think if you're breaking the law, then you should pay us. But it really is a moneymaker, and it's gonna have a huge impact for us too.
Well, while I play with language, maybe go to the rest of the questions in the audience and with Commissioner Sycamore.
Sure. I'm saving some of the big questions for the end. It's a little bit outside the scope of this, but I think it's important to talk about. This question from Jean here: what money literally can come to U Street in fiscal year 27? Sort of putting a finer point on the question a couple questions ago, in terms of this. I mean, this pot of money is not really available for spending right now. I mean, it exists, but we're looking for the best vehicle to spend it, and we're hoping that is the bid. as opposed to just doling it out to some individual one-off agency project.
$1 million for the bid for the next fiscal year.
Right.
Which is,
and
I
the rest
think,
of the
more than they want or need, but it's
right.
there.
And the rest of the PPZ money will just continue to accumulate, and then, yeah,
Yep.
sort of not spoken for in the short term.
Correct.
Okay. And a couple questions in here about.
I've had my hand up for a while.
I'll come to you in a second. A couple of questions in here about types of investments in U Street, tying in with the rough weekend we just had. What about an investment in public safety?
Public safety is an
Trash cleaning,
allowable
children's
expense,
programming,
all of it.
Harrison Rec
all of it.
Center. Just sort of try to understand, like, how long will it take to set up a bid, and how does this money become useful for the community?
Yeah.
Another,
Well, okay, let me just read.
Is the bid the only vehicle for that, as opposed to, I guess, agency projects would be the only other way that you would spend this money?
Yeah. So the authorized uses literally are place management initiatives, public space maintenance, public safety initiatives, transportation safety and public space improvements, and supports for business. So and the answer is, like, so here's the deal. There's a bid in progress, and then there's neighborhood management authority in progress, and either one of them will move first and then the other one will happen and they'll merge, or one will subsume the other. But, like, either way, we're on track for U Street to have a place management entity, which is great news because we haven't been this far along in at least the 20 years that I've represented U Street, right? That's great news. And the even greater news is that it's funded. So, like, you guys are in a really good position on U Street. And so I think we should be rooting for both right now. I don't think they're in competition, in my opinion. I think that they're both good. But we don't know which one is gonna, like, we don't know which one is gonna actually succeed in its process. And they're
Right.
totally different processes, right?
I think the questions are kind of getting at, and there's a good example that just dropped in the Q&A right now. Why not spend some money on the main streets right now to help clean up on U Street in this first fiscal year that there is PPZ money, as opposed to holding it for a bid to stand up, hopefully by next fiscal year?
I'm just thinking Main Streets, I mean, it doesn't, yeah, I mean, could do that for sure. I mean, there's no reason not to. I think of the list of things, the one that Main Streets mostly do is the support for businesses. Clean teams do some public space management, some public safety initiatives, some public space improvements, but not really. That's more structural. Some main streets do place management initiatives. Yeah, I mean, sure.
But not something you're contemplating putting in the budget in the next couple of weeks?
I don't think we need to. I mean, the money's there and the authority's there.
But the conclusion there is that we'd rather let the money accumulate for a larger project in a future fiscal year.
So I think a couple things. One is that, like, when we created the fund, it was for these two entities, whichever one emerges, right? And in my mind, the bid is important enough that we wanted to make sure there was a set aside for the bid, which is why that was what we focused on in this budget. I mean, really, the goal here is to get that up and running, right? And it doesn't mean that the Main Street couldn't use some of those funds in the interim, but I do think we want to make sure the Main Street has its own funding. And I think we want to make sure that we stay focused on what the overarching goal is for U Street, which is having a place management entity of some kind. But it's like, I don't have a dog in that fight per se, right? Like, I'm not going to,
Would you rewrite or amend your NMA bill to take out the references to either subsuming or limiting a bid when it gets formed. There's two references. The first is that if the NMA is formed post a bid, the bid is folded under the NMA and the funds are directed to the NMA for its use. And then the second reference is that once the NMA is formed, the mayor is prevented from reviewing any bid applications in the NMA area. So it seems that they are less collaborative and conciliatory than you're suggesting. I think those two amendments would potentially let them run in parallel, as you suggest, and to provide double benefit as they were.
I mean, I can't do anything till we get a hearing. And I really need a hearing on this for Columbia Heights. Please let me finish answering your question. We really do need a hearing on this for the Columbia Heights portion, for sure. I mean, the bid now has a business plan, so we want to support getting that stood up, and that didn't exist when the NMA bill was introduced. So I think some people are getting tripped up by the fact that the NMA bill is still out there and still includes the Duke District NMA, but I can't update that legislation until it moves through committee. I mean, I don't like if there's a bid, that's great. That's all we need. I mean, right? Like I support a bid. I've always supported a bid. I don't understand why people are trying to make it like this big, like contentious thing.
So just to clarify this, if the bid is a realistic prospect, let's say you get a hearing, I don't even know, in the next couple of weeks on the NMA bill, are you making an assessment day by day how realistic the prospect of the bid is? And then if it's truly getting off the ground, you would in committee move to remove some of the language about the NMA subsuming, or?
I feel like we're getting overly technical about stuff that I can't really answer because we don't know. Like, no, none of us know right now which of these things is the most viable. And I don't want to give up on either until we know, right?
Sure.
It is not an exaggeration to say that we are in constant contact with the folks leading the bid effort, constant contact. I feel like, it's just a lot of conversation. It's good, it's productive, but the point is that we're trying to stay on the same page because we all want the same thing. And when I met with the leadership of the effort last week, we talked about what this funding means for them and how excited they are, and how much they need it to get their effort off the ground. And I think the bottom line is what we're talking about tonight is a resolution about my amendment that does that gets the bid up off of the ground with funding. And I think that's being lost a little bit in some of the dialogue here.
Well, there certainly are two issues that sort of are interconnected here, the PPZ and the bid NMA conversation. I wanted to bring in, since we're talking about the specific point about the bid, before we turn back to the text, I wanted to bring in Michael McCarthy. I see his hand is up. You are able to unmute. You're on the steering committee of the bid formation effort. I know you had a question in the chat, so go ahead.
I just appreciate all of the information that has been shared tonight and kind of the review of the state of play. A little nervous about some of the conversations because I don't want people to lose any trust in the bid effort itself. The bid effort is not reliant on these funds that we're talking about. They could certainly do a lot with them. But, if for any reason something happened with these PPZ funds, the bid is still and can still be viable. Obviously, not on the same scale, not by a long shot. The one thing we have always just kind of made clear is that we've talked to David many about this, is some sort of language in the bid legislation that if an NMA is established, the bid would be collapsed. What we're trying to avoid there is any potential for double taxation of the property owners. And we know God knows we've heard it as we've gone out for the petition process. The property owners are keenly aware that they are the most heavily taxed in the city. So that's it's a key factor, obviously, in everything that we are doing. So I think that Beyond that, I think that as I said, there's a lot we could put the funds to work with. The one thing the bid does work with is the Main Street. Those are very complementary functions. Main Streets typically are not recipients of grants because they can't float the cost. Grants tend to be reimbursements, and bids can. So bids and Main Streets function differently, but very complementary. Main Streets can't do capital improvement projects. Bids can. Just a few of those kind of nuances. So anybody has any questions, they can always reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any that you may have. And welcome, continuing to work with Councilmember Nadel and David.
Great. Thank you for being here. Nice to have you as always. I'll turn to Commissioner Sycamore in the queue.
Thank you. Yeah, it may be a really quick note for Nicole. I actually just got a text message from a constituent saying that the parking signs on the northbound side of 13th Street, the code does not work apparently. So make sure that those are up and running, please. If you could, maybe you can contact our DDOT friends and see if they can work on that. My other thing is, I have to commend Commissioner Fay. If I were to be talked down to like that, like a child, I would lose it. Councilmember Nadeau, this is completely out of character, and I'm so sorry that you have to resort to talking down to people the way you do like this. There's a lot of misunderstanding about this amendment, and there's a lot of things that people are really angry about with this amendment because they do feel like that you are robbing them to pay Peter to pay, what is it? Rob Peter to pay Paul. It's looking at this legislation and looking at the amendment, it is so vague that people are afraid that this money will in the future be taken away. And we've worked hard and you've worked hard to make sure this money is staying here. So for you to kind of sit here and kind of talk down and say, oh, this isn't happening. Why is it then that people are taking this and interpreting this as you are taking money away from us? This should have been thought about a long time ago when this legislation was originally drafted. Where to use this money, how to use this money, where this money is going to go, and how we are actually going to apply this money to the greater U Street area. And unfortunately, it seems like right now there's just not a lot of foresight with that. It just seems like that we can take that money and just put it anywhere else. So please tell me, where do you think that people are misunderstanding this in this amendment? Because it's not just out of nowhere that people are making this up. There's obviously parts of this amendment that people look at and say, this is bad. This is bad for us. So can you explain to me, maybe take another side, take it from our perspective. Where do you think people are misunderstanding this? And why do you think they're misunderstanding this?
Thanks for the question, Commissioner. I mean,
can I ask you, sorry, Councilmember, can I ask you to answer that question in a way that helps inform how we might tweak the language of the resolution that's on the floor?
Sure. Is there an update on that language?
I just made 2 tweaks, which is why I probably had a funny face on while I was doing that. Yep.
Pop it up, please, so we can work with something tangible.
All right. So I tackled the 2 areas that we were talking about. So whereas the amendment, rather than stripping, allocates 2.5 from the performance parking zone to a DDOT program during FY27. Come back to that. And then the last is, rather than restoring, because we've talked about the fact that they are temporarily unavailable, but they are not taken, ensure that the 2.55 used to collateralize the DDOT automated, I'm going to get the program correct in the final version, is made whole and available to the fund for use as intended by FY, and I'd like to be able to say in FY28, but we can talk about that. So essentially what we're saying is that the dollars aren't being taken, because that's been our discussion tonight. They're being temporarily allocated, and that we're looking for those dollars to be repaid and made whole per the amendment language that you had sent around earlier.
Can we say like exclusively toward the U Street corridor, exclusive use for the U Street corridor?
What's really nice is that Councilmember Nadeau already did that.
Oh, lovely.
You says,
so,
yeah, she wrote that.
In the first whereas that you're editing.
Yeah.
It, mm, those funds are available. So the last sentence, making those funds unavailable, is maybe just something to strike.
Made whole rather than unavailable.
No, so it says the action is making those funds unavailable for investment as intended. That is not accurate. They're still available. So I would just strike it.
Okay, give me a second. Outside the greater usage proposed parking zone. And you want to take out this, making those funds unavailable, because you're saying they are available.
They are available. Yes. And then it says where is the amendment allocates 2.55 million from the performance parking fund to a DDAP program. I mean, I don't really know how to work with this particular language because it's the money's still in the pot. I mean, maybe that doesn't, I think it implies that it's not. I mean, I would say the resolution could request that the executive put together a spend plan for the rest of the funds. That might be of interest to this body. The funds that are not directly allocated. Trying to think of how we could help you beef it up a little bit with more stuff that you want, as opposed to the narrative that's not exactly accurate.
Well, we definitely want council to amend the amendment, right? Because you have already proposed amendments. You have clarified in your own language that anything that was used would be repaid back to the fund. So I think that's probably a fair thing to say, that if anything is used, it would be restored.
Oh, I know. Instead of allocates, I think the most accurate word would be authorizes. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And she did state that it didn't have to wait to FY27. It can be done immediately if we wanted. Is that correct, council member?
Um, yeah, that's correct.
So why don't we put immediately? Because the funds are available immediately.
Oh, I think that was just a note. I think that was just so that the commissioner could refer back to that later to understand what we were talking about.
Oh yeah, sorry, Alan. That was me. Just kind of the council member said, look, your funds are available and for use in FY27. And I just wanted to make sure that I had that as a note, that we were capturing that.
Secretary.
So obviously it's up to you whether you want the two intervening paragraphs now that you have clarification on what is actually happening. But skipping to the final one, to ensure that 2.5 million is the club price. That is made, yeah, I think that's fine.
That word take.
Yeah, I'm kind of like,
Yeah. I guess those are just stylistic choices at this point, but
Throw leverage in
know,
there.
yeah, we're not, yeah. But in any case,
I'm debating, Chair, whether or not we
Sure.
take those, whether we take those out. Right. Sometimes as our shared understanding evolves, right? So too does our language. Okay.
There's to a question raised in the Q&A. There is no way, or I mean, I don't think we got a clear answer before about a timeline for the repayment. Obviously, we've established that DDOT has this fiscal year to leverage the funds because that's part of the budget. In the way you've written it in your amendment to your amendment is that the the funds shall be repaid. but there isn't a schedule or anything. How does your team think about that in terms of ensuring that it actually happens?
I think that they're only authorized to access it in FY27. That's what we were discussing earlier. So I don't know, David, many you're listening in here. We think like in FY28 would make sense. While we're getting that answer, given that you're drafting a resolution on this topic, might be interested to know, and perhaps generate some excitement about the curbside enforcement program. In other cities, it's been deployed 95% reduction in double parking, 15% less time searching for parking, and 70% increase in vehicles able to access businesses. So it could be an opportunity if you wanted to say a couple things about if this commission is excited about its implementation, since you've asked for it for a while, could be a nice one to tuck in there. Okay, so the verdict is we feel it's safe to say that any funds would be replenished in FY28 if used in FY27. So feel free if that provides some comfort and reinforcement.
I'm going to use replenished because I like that. And that's probably a David Many word anyway.
I do have words too.
Well, I know, but he's just so good at it.
I
So now we
agree.
have the amendment authorizes the use of $2.55 million from the Performance Parking Program Fund for use in a DDOT program outside the Greater U Street Performance Parking Zone. Fine. Greater U Street community is concerned by the actions to, got a little ad lib blank there. Money is allocated to the local economy. And in the operative clause, we are asking the council to amend it to ensure that the 2.55 million used to, I think that's supposed to be collateralized, not
Yeah, it is.
collateral. Okay. Collateralize the automated curbside system will be replenished in fiscal year 28.
Oh, I would say instead of the next meeting on the FY27 budget, at the second reading of the BSA is what I would say. Because that's where it has to be done.
Also, I would like to have my question at some point answered because now it's been thwarted twice.
I'm sorry, I forget what your question was.
People feel lied to, and people don't support this. Where do you think in this amendment people are misinterpreting that? And just take a look from our perspective. Can you see where people are upset about this?
Who are you speaking for? Because people is a broad term. Are you speaking for yourself? Or
no, I'm speaking for my constituents who elected me to hold you accountable.
Gotcha.
That's who I'm, and I just got a couple text messages about this.
Okay, well, I hope that you will tell people that
who are on this call and your constituents
Great.
as well.
Then they are hearing me say this again. I apologize for any confusion that there was based on the way this was described to the commissioners. This had to be done at first reading of the BSA. That was the only opportunity to make sure these funds would be available to U Street starting in FY27. It was the only way. So we had to move an amendment to do that. In moving that, we also ensured funds are available for the bid and allowed DDOT to use these funds as collateral so they can start their curbside program. No money has been taken. We do not expect any money to be taken. All the money is still in the fund. I apologize for any confusion. I hope that clarifies things.
I think we have our final language here now. Amendment authorizes the use of the PPZ funds, for use in a DDOT program outside the Greater U Street Performance Parking Zone. The Greater U Street community wants to ensure that the PPZ fund monies are available to the local economy, which is greatly in need, et cetera, et cetera. Therefore, ANC 1B asks council to amend the amendment, blah, 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 at the second reading of the BSA to ensure that the 2.55 million used to collateralize the DDOT program will be replenished in fiscal year 28. That's how the resolution stands now. That sounds good to me. Any further
you have one
technical
orphan sentence. You have one
Same
orphan
one.
sentence,
Oh,
which is the second
because
to
the
last
funds?
paragraph, without providing any opportunity to the community to advocate for itself.
That is orphan.
And real
I
quick,
don't know what this.
did
Sorry.
Sycamore,
The-
did Commissioner Sycamore get his question answered? He's waited patiently and he's asked it a couple times, and I want to make sure he got his question answered. Commissioner Sycamore, did you get your question answered?
It probably won't be answered. We can move on.
Okay.
This thing right here in the brackets, because the funds are available for use in FY27. What's going on there?
That's just it's bracketed as a note, which
Oh.
is what the council member had said.
Okay.
And it's not going to, it won't stay in the resolution. It's just part of our draft. For reference
Got
at
it.
a later point, it will come out. It'll come out with the final version.
Cool. Okay. I am
call
very
the
happy with
question?
this. Yes, there's a motion on the floor to call the question. Is there a second to the motion to call the question?
Second.
Any objection to calling the question?
Just keep in mind that I had not actually moved this resolution, so I will move the resolution now. And ready, Holden, you ready for your quick second?
Second.
No, I haven't done it yet.
Motion.
I
Wow.
I move.
Jump the gun.
So moved, so seconded. The motion on the motion before us now is to call the question. Is there any objection to calling the question? Hearing no objections to calling the question. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, please raise your Zoom hands now. That's 6 in favor. Any opposed, please raise your Zoom hands. Anyone wishing to mark an abstention, please raise your Zoom hand. I've got one abstention. Is that correct? 6 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. Going once, going twice.
Actually, would like to change my vote to an abstention. Thank you.
That's 5 yeas, 0 nays, 2 abstentions. For the
I'm
record,
going to
the
actually
motion.
change my vote to an abstention as well. Thank you.
That's 4 yeas,
I would
0
like
nays.
to change mine to nay.
That's 4 yeas, 1 nay, 2 abstentions. Am I correct?
No, you got 3 abstentions, 1 nay, and I don't know how many. That's it doesn't.
No,
that
that's
math
not correct.
does
All right. I'm sorry. We're going to vote again one more time. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, please raise your Zoom hands. In favor of the motion to adopt the resolution as amended, we have 4 yeas. Hands down. All those opposed, please raise your hands. That's 1 nay. Thank you very much. And those wishing to note abstentions, 2. 4, 1, 2. The motion passes. Thank you very much. That concludes our business for the evening. We are prohibited from discussing anything that was not in the original call for a special meeting. So I will see you all at next week's edition of Special Meeting, Monday, June 29th, 6 p.m. by Zoom. Thank you all. Thank you, council member. Thank you, council members, staff. Thank you, community members. Thank you, especially Mr. McCarthy from the BID. Really appreciate all of you.